It's the SDG Podcast. Before we get started, you can check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com/podcast or find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Solution Design Group. So vibe coding is basically prompting an LLM to give you some code. It kicks it out and you try it, and you do that over and over again until somehow you hit pay dirt. So that's vibe coding in that sense. Today I want to talk about vibe coding in the sense of low code. And it's a little different because it's low code, but I think it's the same thing because I've been doing it, or what I think it is. So joining us to talk about it, we've got a crazy cast of characters today. We got Eric Schneider with us.
Howdy.
Claire Patera.
Hello.
Ben Story. You're muted, Ben. Yeah, you're no longer the lead of the low-code people.
No, I'm now fired. Hey.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody.
Corey's been promoted. Corey,
hey,
Alex.
Everybody.
Hello. I'm Kyle Bacher. And did I go too fast? Did you say hi, Corey?
I said hello. Yes.
Excellent. Because we're audio only, so it's like helping people pick out the voices. Anyway, I kind of wanted to talk about this because I've built agents and I've ended up from Nintex to SharePoint to Power Apps, doing stuff in Flow. And that took me over to the Azure world, where I'm creating blob storage and using Azure Search AI and things like that. And I really am not familiar with most of that. I'm familiar with Nintex. That's kind of my bread and butter and what most of our stuff is built on. So, Corey, I'm going to ask you first because you seem to have a lot of the back end knowledge of the low code stuff available in like Microsoft 365 and Nintex and all of that. Do you find yourself relying more on AI to do what you do than you used to?
Right now, I find it as a good part of the development toolbox, for maybe speccing things out, doing some prototyping with Power App UI. I wouldn't say it's replacing my current development style with low code, but it is something of interest, and it seems to be ever evolving right now. Something we should pay attention to.
Ben, you've been doing some stuff with Copilot. I know that. And it seems like Copilot's wants to help. In every text box you can type into, there's interference from a little Copilot thing saying, "Hey, do you want me to tell you stuff?"
Yeah, no, Copilot's been a really nice helper, and the name kind of says it all, right? It is like this little thing, Copilot, to help you do your stuff. And one of the jokes I like to have, it's literally like the new Clippy. It's like it's literally showing up everywhere in Office, in Office 365 Online, in Power Platform. It's everywhere, and it's definitely helped aiding in our development, and I think it's making us faster so that we could kind of look up things or ask it or prompt it for certain things that we might be trying to do to help us write more efficient code. But I think that's where it's been playing it most. And then, getting into the custom agents or autonomous agents and things like that through Copilot Studio, I think is one of the next big waves of low-code development as well.
My ulterior motive is the underlying message, I think, is, low code was kind of a way for people to do development that weren't otherwise programmers and didn't really live in that code space. But instead got these toolkits they could use to develop, apps that would add a lot of value. And kind of that's where I started my career. I always wanted an expert like right behind me to give me answers whenever I got stuck on something. And I think that this is kind of becoming that. Um,
Yeah,
Agreed.
with that whole citizen developer piece, right? And vibe coding, I think more people are going to try to become citizen developers. I think it might create some chaos because I don't think a lot of organizations have the right guardrails in yet to manage that.
Agreed.
Governance will be key. Yep. Agreed.
I've been working recently with there's an ongoing initiative at my customer for overhauling a Excel file filled with macros to a standalone application. And that's the part of the uncomfortable part of this is like, well, that came about from one person who had a lot of initiative in the business space over many years. Is that a similar situation could be created overnight using current tools, like you said, because there's no guardrails against it, right? That same tool that can help you format your Excel file neatly could also help you just as easily help you add 10,000 lines of Visual Basic for applications code into that same spreadsheet, right? And is that what we want the business users focused on or not is a good question.
yeah,
Right.
I know, Ben, you've run into this, and Corey, you probably run into it, and Claire, you ran into it with Ben and I, getting a hold of Nintex
Oh my.
and doing stuff.
Yep.
And then it's like, hey, this works. This is great. But we
Mhm.
found, like, out of our customers, we had key people that would pick it right up and be able to start doing stuff and then taking it over when we left.
Yeah,
But
and I
that was,
think
yeah.
And I think the key piece of that was we helped get the governance in place and kind of the strategy and the training and kind of all the things. So like there wasn't as much like shadow IT happening at those clients of just people going out and building their own apps without oversight or anything of like anybody knowing what's going on with them, right? So I think that was one of the big pieces like that you and I did within our customers around rolling out low code solutions, whether it be platform or Nintex, to be able to hand that off in a nice, timely manner.
So Eric, you as a digital ops guy, you're working with a lot of different platforms and piecing everything together, making sure everything works together. Is that a good description? Did I do you justice?
I mean, there's some truth in that. I mean, a lot of the focus is how to make things happen quicker, and so obviously AI is intended to be a tool to make things speed up. So there's a place there for that.
Where do you see when someone walks in and says, "Hey, I got this thing I built"?
Yeah,
Sure.
well, yeah, because a lot of it has to do with does it fit into an existing mold? Because that's often with DevOps in particular, right? Because like if you're doing it well, you're enabling self-service, and what we're talking about is another form of self-service, right? Where a development team can pull together all the pieces they need to develop and launch a new application. But often there's this idea of a golden path, and there's some balance there where the golden path is here's the way we intended you to leverage this platform, and here's the way that we support very actively. Like here's the tutorial, here's sample code, and if you have questions about these things, we can readily answer them because we actively maintain them. But you also want teams to be able to veer off into the wilderness if they need to, right? And like that should be allowed. But then once they do that, then there's not as much support. That's by design. And so, like you said, if they're doing something that fits upon that golden path, then there really wouldn't be any friction with it. But if they've gone off and built something that doesn't fit that mold, is off in the wilderness, then they're often on their own. But that's usually well understood with with a healthy like deployment platform. But But it all depends, right? If it's something new in the organization, there's value in it, wherever, then we want to try and support that too. So there's always balance there, right?
Do you get a lot of non-developers trying to insert that kind of stuff through vibe coding in the DevOps world? Because I mean, and maybe I misunderstand what that's all about. I mean, you are literally, making the work pipeline as efficient as possible setup, and I mean, just the flow of everything. Isn't that really what DevOps is all about? Do you really get a lot of non-technical people?
I think there's going to be more of it.
Okay.
Because
that to me is very interesting. Like I could see me like trying to vibe code an app and going, hey Ben, let's see if we can work this into something. But on the DevOps side, I feel like I would be so far out of my depth into even what that would just floor me if you've got non-developers doing that in your space, Eric, which wow, that's to me a little scary.
to Kyle's point earlier about having like somebody behind you to ask, right? Like it's like anything. The first time you go skydiving, there's somebody who's your BFF for that day to help you figure out how to do skydiving, right? Like and like because to a degree, like again, if your developer platform is healthy, there's no gating for doing things other than knowledge. And so if it's like, well, this is designed for people who know how to write code and engage with things like Visual Studio and stuff like that, like there's that like inherent knowledge to that role that's an obstacle, then yeah, you generally wouldn't have a business user out there who with that depth of knowledge. Yeah. This like the tools now are breaking down those barriers where it doesn't. You can ask it to do something in a language you've never heard of, and it could produce something that works.
Sure.
Whether it's well written or not, you can't judge, but it can work.
Right.
And so you might, it's now more likely that somebody would show up and say, hey, I wrote this and I'm trying to figure out how to get into the dev platform to deploy this, right? It would be a feasible scenario now.
That for sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And Kyle, back to that expert like sitting behind you, like, and maybe this has changed. I heard a month or two ago, and AI is moving so fast, who knows? And the models are constantly learning. But I heard a statistic that AI is quite literally wrong 25% of the time. So when you're talking about that expert, I feel like a human expert is going to be more reliable. If that's still the case.
Ben is fully wrong 30% of the time.
I don't believe that for a second.
Never tell me the odds.
I was gonna say, even I think that even people who are experts are wrong a lot of the time, but humans can be held accountable in a way that you can't hold these tools accountable.
Sure.
And the thing that we've talked about on the podcast like a whole bunch of times is like, because if you extrapolate this out to something like self-driving, if the car on it is intended to be, it's driving on its own, it's a level 4 thing, and you're not intended to take over if it fails and it crashes, who do you blame at that point? Yeah. Like, it's not well defined. And I think the same thing is true here. Is if I'm working with an HVAC company installing a new air conditioner and something goes wrong with that air conditioner, I can call them back up and they warranty that work, and I can hold them accountable to mistakes they make, because they will make mistakes, and I don't expect them to be perfect, but I can actually hold them accountable. I can't hold any of these tools accountable for anything it says is the gap in my mind.
Well, I think, and just even looking at some of the code that vibe coding even spits out, like Corey and I were looking at just this the other day, and you still need, in my opinion, some sort of human element to look at this code, and Corey can maybe even talk more about it, what he's been doing with vibe coding. But being that that percentage that it is wrong, that's why it's nice to have like those checks and balances before something would hit a production level thing. I mean, I don't know if Corey, you want to elaborate a little bit more on that too?
Yeah, one of the governance is going to be a huge thing with these AI delivered applications. The last thing you want is 50 vibe apps that are being served up, from default environments or personal productivity spaces, that nobody knows about until the thing breaks or what happened. And then got to deal with that. One of my first vibe code experiences was with a customer was, the business, they're excited about AI. They're looking into it. They're not exactly sure how it's going to fit into their department or business, but they want to explore it. So, they're looking at ChatGPT, Claude, you got, of course, Copilot licensing. And there was actually a director that came to me directly and said, "Hey, I built this application using Lovable." Anybody familiar with that one? Lovable AI?
No.
I've heard it. I have not tried it myself.
Yeah. So you can prototype, applications, web apps, what have you, and the director actually was able to use Lovable and created, a pretty decent UI. He had an application with a dashboard, had a submission process, a view, different roles for the app, and he came to me and he said, we're primarily a Microsoft shop. Can we do this with Power Apps or Vibe? How easy would it be to replicate this? So challenge accepted, and just rolling with Vibe, or vibing as they like to call it. I swear, Microsoft, they want it, Xerox, create a verb for all their apps, but working with Vibe, I was able to easily replicate it, if not improve upon it. I was actually really surprised about how it worked.
Yeah, and I guess speaking again from personal experience, like it feels like in a lot of places where, if it's a well-tread road that you're asking AI about, where it's obviously something it was trained on and it's not having to fill in a lot of gaps, then there's a lot more success there. But anywhere where it requires requires arcane knowledge, like a test I still use is I needed to put a hitch on my car and get 7-pin working and all that, but the information for doing that is something I had to cobble together from many different places, and I would say it qualifies as arcane knowledge at that point. And then asking the AI, it very confidently gave me a tutorial on how to do the work I had already done that is extremely wrong and dangerous. And when we talk, and I'm trying to apply that to the low code tools, is looking at it from the outside, it feels like with low code, it often relies a lot on what I would call arcane knowledge, because the code that gets, because low code is there's still code, or there's still often code, but it's managed as part of the platform. It's not checked into places like GitHub generally. There's not necessarily great coverage then where they could ingest that into a model to as much as we talk about other platforms like Java, C# and stuff, where there's billions of lines of code out there to ingest and learn from. I'm curious how well an AI would understand those platforms when there's not as much on paper content to ingest, right?
Yeah, and with Power Apps, Microsoft, they already kind of laid the groundwork out with what's called a plan. That's something that's built into the the Canvas app, model app interface. And it's basically kind of like an AI generated blueprint for your business solution. Maybe you're not fully considering everything that needs to go into your app. You can, it's simple text, you type in, you start, describing your business problem in natural language, and it'll come back with, maybe some user roles for your application, what potential data tables will be, what the recommended Power App solution, either Canvas or model driven. And then, maybe if there's even workflow involved, and, kind of gives you a little plan for you to think about. Now with Vibe, it takes that one step further. In addition to doing all that planning information for you, it'll then generate the app in a UI. So.
Right, and I think where I'm curious of is then given that it's doing that work, what is the data set that they're training on? I'm curious. Are they because it's all a SaaS platform, are they training it on customer customer data, or code that it was written as part of the in that platform? Are they scraping all of that where because I'm skeptical it's just working purely off of documentation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's using Chat GPT 4 or 5, depending on what the client or person who is running your administrative tools has to figure out what model you want to use. But that's kind of what it's using, and I do think it will look at a little bit of the outside world when you're developing some of this stuff. Even though you're in Office 365, I think that's kind of one of the only parts of it that kind of looks to figure out okay, I have this large language model. How can I use all the things in this LLM to then solve the business problem? To then give us something to say, hey, here's what I think it could be. And then you just use like ChatGPT or Copilot, and you just be, oh, well, we need to change this data table and add these fields because these are the custom fields that I know I'm going to need for my application. So we're moving from like a syntax driven to very intent driven application development, and mostly just describing what we want things to happen versus actually like, oh, I need to drag and drop this thing 5 pixels over here versus I need to move this text box 5 pixels to the right. That, so there's some nuances to it. And yeah, I would say, and the biggest thing is the challenge. Yeah, I think what Eric is trying to get at is how reliable is the quote unquote code that is getting generated, because there is millions and millions and millions of lines of C# and Java and all those things. They're very, very legacy applications or coding languages. They've been around for a very long time with those object-oriented things. Low code is still new, but it's to a point now where we're building some pretty sophisticated things. We can connect these things to different check-in mechanisms if we want to, and add some DevOps related things. But oftentimes I'll write some PowerFX code, and then I might go out to Copilot and say, hey, does this look optimized? Did I do this the right way? And maybe just have it like as a check and balance. And it might return back and say, oh, hey, you might be able to like tweak a couple things. But we've also seen some problems with that too, where our developers have tried to optimize code using some tool sets, and we've ran into some issues. So we just got to make sure we're taking backups of things to help with that.
I think that 25% error rate is helping me learn the stuff and not just, pass along the settings from what it's telling me to what I'm setting up. But it's like I run into a problem, and then we have to figure it out. It has to go look at the right documentation for a second, come back and say, well, maybe it's this. And then I go try that, and it's like, okay, well, now I know about that part of the configuration. Now I know that you have to go into the blob after the fact and define those metadata fields and to get them to show up and to be useful. Learning that SharePoint search is not the optimal tool to use for retrieval, augmented, whatever. And even finding out that that's R in RAG stands for retrieval. It's teaching me this stuff, and I'm learning it as I go. I can see it though, like for some people, or maybe it's happening to me and I don't know it. It being like a TED Talk, where when you're watching a TED Talk, you're like, yeah, this is right. This is the stuff. And then at the end of the TED Talk, you're like, yeah, I feel like I'm empowered. And then 10 minutes later, you're like, I have no idea what they said in that TED Talk and how to implement it. But I sure felt good at the time.
I bet. Yeah, if I can piggyback on Ben's statement about, moving a text box 5 pixels or whatever. One thing with vibe code too is, the React, well, you can see it. And as of the time of this recording, you cannot edit any of the code. So you are forced to use the text input to describe what you want. Maybe that'll change at some point. I know there's some YouTube videos, people saying you can convert, a Vibe app over to a Canvas app and stuff like that. But as of this time, you're at the mercy of the intake. So I fully expect to see some social media videos, people arguing with the AI, trying to get, that look and feel just right. Sure, that'll be out.
Yeah. And, Power Platform is a pretty good tool to experiment with vibe coding on, because you could create, I would say it's and Microsoft even says in the vibe coding thing, this is not ready for production. So it is like right now, as of this recording, a good prototyping tool to like try to get your ideas out there and maybe get you a head start on some things. But creating a purchase request process or some approval flows, but I would say some of the more sophisticated apps, some of the things that like we've been building for some of our customers, I think vibe coding could possibly get us started, but it's definitely one of those things where they're pretty highly custom that I don't know if vibe coding is ready for prime time to do those types of sophistications yet. I don't know, Corey, if you want to elaborate any more on that, but that's just kind of where I'm at right now as of, June 12th and this recording, but the
Right.
stuff is moving so fast.
Yeah, I share those same sentiments. I've tried to connect a Vibe app to a backend data source, and it seems like if you have a Dataverse backend environment, it actually will play better with Dataverse. It'll like literally create the tables for you. It also supports SharePoint, but I find the connectors to it are kind of, in my experience, they've been kind of wonky. So,
Yeah.
Taking the UI to that next step, yeah, I think it's still early in the life of the app.
Definitely
And
think it has some promise.
also workflows. If they suggest a Power Automate workflow, it cannot connect to that right now, as of this time.
What? I'm just kidding. Yeah, I look
I
at trying to fit a vibe code thing, like something somebody cobbled together into a full pipeline, seems like that's not really a good solution for it. But for a business user to do something just to automate a part of their job, maybe they create an agent that's going to look through a bunch of stuff that they need to reference. I can see, I did a project for a law firm creating a drop-off library for all their documents, and I don't mean anything against lawyers, but getting lawyers to do frickin' anything is impossible because they're always billing and they're always doing stuff toward the billing. So that's why they have paralegals. And so, but they needed to be able to put stuff in there. So I created this drop-off library, and then different things happened and it would route it to the right place. Well, building an agent to say, give me case law for DUI, and having it pull up case law for DUI, DWI, drinking while driving, driving intoxicated, like all that extra intelligence, and then ranking it based on how new it is or what precedents, things like that. Building that agent just to do that purpose-built stuff. I can see somebody actually sitting down if they have just some basic SharePoint knowledge and some basic, knowledge with using Copilot or Claude or one of those, actually being able to build something like that.
Yeah, I think it could be a really nice personal productivity tool as well. And that's just where I guess governance comes into play, is like where are we developing these personal productivity things within 365? Where are the guardrails and things like that? So I definitely think it's something that still needs to be taken into high consideration. But yeah, if I want to vibe code something to help me out because I know I need it to do this very specific thing, and that specific thing is going to save me a lot of time per week, I think that's where some of the stuff is going to shine.
Right. Yeah. For especially for one-time things, it's extremely potent because it's like,
Right.
I'm looking at information I need to send somebody, but like the Azure UI is not friendly for copy pasting this list. It's it's 17 pages and it's full of icons and stuff, and I can't copy it. Well, going into and go and say, hey, just create me a PowerShell script that grabs this information and just puts it into this format. And I need to do this exactly once. I don't really even care how well the code's written, as long as it does what I just described. It's perfect for that, and it saves me a bunch of time. So, completely agree. And also, because AI is really great for just like brainstorming too.
Oh yeah.
Like, hey, I've got this problem, and here's kind of what I'm thinking. But like, what are my other options? Because like the thing that business users in particular run into with technology is, they were told to do something in a very specific way, and it's not working. And just like trying to find other ways around that and stuff could be a huge boon, instead of having to wait for somebody else to come in and do something that's really trivial and they should be able to do themselves, but they just don't have anybody to help. is a potentially really good, because I use it all the time for that. I don't know why other people who are less technical than me shouldn't be able to use it for the similar purpose.
I find it helpful too. As developers, we like to design applications and stuff, but then when it comes to documentation, we're like, we got to do the tech arc diagram, the data model, this and that. And AI, with Power Apps and Vibe Apps, it will spit that out as per the plan that you define. So that's kind of neat. You get that relatively quick.
Here's how you get around that. Okay.
Hmm?
Listen up. This is the secret knowledge. You say, well, anybody that's coming in behind me to work on this, you're going to get somebody with the same expertise, and they're not going to look at the documentation. They're going to look at the code. They're going to look at under the hood. So I could spend 3-4 weeks rewriting the SharePoint Designer book, or I could come back and spend 15 minutes fixing whatever it was you needed me to, or whoever you hire. And they believed me. But there's truth to that. When I went in to fix something, I always looked at the back end of it. I never looked at the documentation because I needed to see what was actually happening behind the scenes. So, but the fact that that's kicking out documentation for you, Corey, makes me very jealous because I have written a ton of documentation.
Well, my entire career, I thought people always trumpet, comment or code, but are we? I guess we're at a point where do we want to vibe comment our vibe code, right? Is that necessary?
No kidding. Well, Eric, have you heard about Claude documenting code? Because I hear that's kind of a big thing right now. That it's able to do it for you. Okay.
Well, that's good. Please elaborate, because I'd love to hear more about it.
Well, you if you're a full stack developer or whatever, and you got in-depth code and pages and pages of logic, apparently Claude can go in and actually document that for you.
Oh, all right. Okay. So you're talking about like, I've got this code already, but I don't. It's incomprehensible. Like
you haven't documented anything. Yes.
Right. So yeah. So can you go back, roll back time, and pretend like like somebody who believed in commenting did it, and backfill it all? Yeah. That's
exactly.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yep. I see that as a good use.
I have a hard time like automating my job. I can create automations for other people, systems to do this or that using Intex or whatever. But if someone says, you should use these AI tools and you can increase your productivity and automate your job, and it's like, I don't ever do the same thing the same way twice. I don't even drive home the same way twice. There's 6,000 ways to get from the office to my house, and I've taken all of them. And so I have a hard time like visualizing that. Hey, if I do this thing, it's going to help me, because I'm just mostly jumping from problem to problem. But I'm starting to see some things, and it's stuff that I'll be able to do. And I think it's the kind of things that, because I have some requests on my plate that have been put on the back burner. It's like, I think this person could do this with Nintex and Claude, just to figure it out. I haven't used the AI in Nintex, but that's also a possibility, where it's a simple, hey, when this happens, send this email, do this, do that, kind of a thing. They know the process. They know the pseudocode. And it's like, well, if you know the pseudocode and you can type that into an LLM, they can kick out the actual code. Pseudocode, for those who don't know, is just writing out what's happening. When they do this, this happens. Then this could happen, or this could happen based on this thing.
It's ideating, and basically you're taking notes in natural language to mock up how the code is going to be. Is really
and captured pseudocode for the end of year, like rev sharing, PTO sharing process of gathering that information. You had a conversation with Kim.
Yep.
You talked to me about it. You gave me the pseudocode, and I said, I got this. Then I talked to Kim. Eventually, we built it. It saves her like 2 weeks a year.
Mhm.
But I think she's filled that with other stuff. So,
Probably more important things than just worrying about what that process now automates for her. And that's kind of some of the nice thing is like when you can automate things, whether it's for yourself or things we automate for our customers, it keeps the mundane things out of their day-to-day schedule and keeps them focused on the important things to help make sure the business is running versus tracking down things or writing extra documentation or whatever that might be.
So one of the questions. Okay.
I was like, Kyle said he couldn't imagine how his job could get automated, but now I'm just imagining it's the whole everyone else has been replaced and Kyle's still there with all the robots. But the robot is coming to you to complain that Salesforce says I need a pass key and it can't figure it out.
Pass keys. Let's talk about that. No, I'm kidding.
By design, yeah.
oh, pass keys.
Okay, so maybe I should have asked this sooner. Maybe you guys have actually already kind of covered this and I just wasn't listening well enough. What is that, Kyle? But
He's a robot holding up a pass key.
So to someone who's not technical, isn't AI kind of just another low code tool? I mean, isn't vibe coding low code? And if not, what's the difference? Like to me, it seems like this is just another tool in the low code toolkit, but I could be way off base.
Yeah, I think I like that way of framing it a lot. Because you're right. I think a key difference is often when you're using a low code tool, like you're building something that's very explicit, right? In the same way that like programming normally is. Like you're like if the program doesn't do what you wanted it to do, it's not because the code like didn't run right. It's because you didn't write it right, right? Like it's all very it's the computer always does what you tell it to do. In other words.
Right.
And a lot of like low code tools are the same way, where whatever you set up for the logic or whatever the tooling is, it's doing what you ask it to do. But with an LLM though, there's a lot of gray area there of going from what you asked it to do to what you got. And the weird thing is by design, with the way that they're built is. If you asked a given AI to do something for you, and then 5 minutes later you ask the exact same question, you're gonna get a different output.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's very true. Yep.
So that's where like then the translation from the input to the output isn't as reliable.
Yep.
As it would be with other tools.
So it's interesting you say that because I know that to be true too, because I use ChatGPT in Copilot. But then I also sometimes throw the same stuff out into just plain old ChatGPT, and I get not vastly different, that's not fair, but I do get different answers, like, because it's the same question, I'm getting similar answers, but they're written very differently by what I assume is the same LLM, or not, really not quite the same tool maybe, because one's in Copilot and the other's on its own.
Yeah, there might be different inherent system prompts in there, slightly different versions of things that were deployed on different days with slightly different training data and that kind of stuff. But even just like if I asked a question and opened a new tab, the same tool, and asked the same question, like you said, it'll spit out something that might be largely the same, but it's written differently or kind of flows differently. And one of them might even make more sense to me versus the other if I'm asking for it to brainstorm or something, because it just happens to click well.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, but like I said, I do like the idea that it's another low code tool, because it doesn't take inherent expertise to and that's really what vibe coding is trying to venture into a territory by just guessing your way through without knowing where the cliffs are or the dangers or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, so I feel like the traditional low code tools are obviously safer in that regard. Like they already have the guardrails, etc.
Yeah.
So
more traditional, yeah.
Yeah.
like with a Canvas app, Microsoft says this is a low code, no code solution. Unless you're using a template, I disagree with no code. But
Okay.
with Vibing, it is truly no code because you're using natural language and to build the application. There's nothing you can edit with the code at this time. Whereas with Canvas app, you can even go high code if you want. You can sit all day in the expression editor and code to your heart's content. But
That's been a big help is formulas,
mhm.
and also a big pain in the ass because it's like, oh, Nintex doesn't like that much nesting, and who knew? And I think I had ChatGPT involved, Claude and Grok all involved, and then I had to have them apologize to each other, and it was a thing. But
Did they
I
do it?
finally got it done, and date math is hard. Uh, so
It is.
that
Those
that was
local time
frustrating,
zones,
but
doggone it.
yeah, that was frustrating. But I don't think I could have done it without it, or it would have taken a lot longer because I'd have to learn all those formulas and then piece that together. So it's that expert over the shoulder giving you something to copy and paste and try, and not guaranteed to work. And you have to know that. And it helps to have some knowledge going into it. So when something breaks, you kind of know how to troubleshoot. You kind of know what you're dealing with, what it's talking to. Um, you still need that person in there that has some kind of tech skills or mind for it, um, that's willing to work through those problems. And maybe there's a actual low code product or thing that already does it that you're missing out on because you don't know it. It's freshly fallen snow to you. So you're going to do it this other way. And it's like, well, actually, there's a whole action that does it. All you do is type in these 6 things. And it's like, oh, then a tear because I wasted my whole week. There's danger, like I'm reminded of I'm always wary of the promise of something when they make the promise of it. And this happened with Moss 2007. Ben, you know what I'm going to say, I think, and Corey.
Eye roll, epic eye roll right here.
Not realizing what was going to break migrations and not realizing how quickly those migrations were going to need to happen. And then breaking pages away from their page layout and adding the Fab 40 templates to your farm and
custom master pages and custom web parts.
Yeah.
All the things.
Yeah. Discussion lists.
But
oh my God. So you're and then that whole part of the industry went, let's not code anymore. No more of this. They started locking down the things that people were using that messed things up. So
I think people are keeping those things close to the chest right now, because it's still of kind of the unknowns of what could happen with all these promises that AI can bring. I think people are a little bit still skeptical of some stuff. But I think in the end, it's hopefully going to save us hours of development time at some point. I think it's going to help us hopefully architect better solutions and things like that when we utilize these things to our advantage, when we're not just looking at personal productivity things, and working closely with like IT or the business to kind of really figure out what's the best way to roll these apps out, or the right training or the request process so somebody can get training to then learn, okay, now I can go vibe code this thing, and what does that mean?
Yeah. And I see online too all the time, people say, well, is vibe coding, is that going to replace Power Apps? Will Power Apps be retired? And no. I see maybe a gradual integration of the two, but there's still a lot of things that Vibe cannot do. For one thing, it can't do mobile apps. not at all. Power Apps, that's a big feature. And, especially with Power Apps now doing like reactive screens where, they'll auto format for you depending if you're on a web browser or an iPad or a mobile phone. And, it can't write workflows yet. If there's going to be like some kind of an application with an approval process, Vibe cannot do that. I'm trying to think of some other things. Rich customizations, some of that stuff that you can do in Canvas app, the different data connectors, that's not there yet. So it's still in its infancy. I don't think it's going to replace Power Apps anytime soon.
And theoretically, the part of the appeal of low code or no code is like it's less arduous to maintain compared to like something you're building from scratch. And just because an AI can one shot your application and make a million lines of code for you, well, now you have a million lines of code in your lap that you have to maintain.
Using right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, someone
and
else's
optimized, code. Other security considerations. There's all kinds of stuff that go into that.
Yep, I think it's going to help enhance our productivity. I don't think it's going to replace us. I think it's going to make it better. I think it's going to allow us to make better apps, like I said, and in the end, it's just going to be a big win for us. It's going to be a big win for our customers for us to be able to utilize these tools to the full capacity to continue to provide value.
Yeah, and it's right. And going back to something Kyle said a half hour ago about like kind of a glass half full perspective on it of, if I vibe code, I vibe coded something like last week where I was like, I just want to muddle my way through this as fast as I can. And in the end, I was trying to do something that wasn't even feasible. But we get to the end and it's like, hey, this doesn't seem to work at all. And it's like, you're right, this is a terrible idea. It's like, but you were going along with the entire way.
Oh, I've been there. Yeah.
Until we
got to the end. But to Kyle's earlier point, like I actually learned a whole bunch of stuff along the way because I was like trying to do something with Bluetooth and embedded hardware, and it's gonna put it in my wife's car and all this stuff to help with a problem with her stereo and all this stuff. And it was a cool idea, but it turns out it wasn't even feasible, and it didn't have the knowledge to check me on the feasibility. But it's like, even if it's making mistakes, if we're learning and being more productive, it's helpful. I mean, I have a robot upstairs that cleans my floors every day. It is extremely bad at it. It's very slow at it.
Really? It's not, at this point, it's not looking
Wait. Is it bad, or it's just not as good as you would do, and it's still cleaning? It's cleaner than it was if you hadn't done it at all.
Exactly. That's the thing. Like, if we were going to do like a head to head of like who can clean this floor better, I would crush that thing.
Of course.
Is there an all-terrain version of it that can go over stuff that's on the floor?
I've seen ones that have like articulating arms that will like move things out of the way and stuff like that, but
seriously?
ours doesn't have anything like that. But it'll just go around obstacles or consume them, one or the other. It's always a surprise to learn which one. But
I need like a bulldozer.
But the glass has half empty viewpoint and all this is like, this thing is not very good at its job. But the glass half full thing is like, but I never have to clean my floor, so I'm just gonna go along with it.
It's clean enough.
Sorry, I killed your punchline, Eric.
I still got it.
You want to hear the most ridiculous product? There's actually like a Roomba vacuum that you can buy for your grill, like a gas grill.
I've seen that, yeah.
Well, I mean, who has a grill big enough to make that worthwhile, and all the stuff that gets caked?
I thought the scraping at it was actually part of the experience, like.
You should relish it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, I never saw that as like, I gotta do this terrible part of grilling. Like cleaning my floors is not the fun part of owning a house. That's for sure.
What is the fun part? Somebody needs to tell me.
It probably varies, but it probably varies by the person. But I like fixing things, so like.
Oh yeah, that's not. Yeah, that's not the prevailing theory, or we don't like that here.
No building association.
Yes.
Yeah, I got to deal with the city, but at least I don't have a homeowners association to deal with.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And this, people complain about St. Louis Park all the time and how, you got to have a permit just to pull a permit. And no, they're not that bad. If you communicate with them, They're not bad, and communicate via email is the best way to get an answer. That's gold. I should have led with that. Nothing to do with this presentation or this conversation.
This conversation, yeah.
Yes. You know, I heard something where a company rolled out like Copilot or one of these tools to the company wide. And then they went back like a month later and ran some reports and realized that only 2% of their people were actually using these things.
Really?
It's
Yeah.
crazy because they don't teach people how to use it correctly, and I think people are, if they don't know that they have a new tool to use and do some education and around it, then I think their adoption levels have been really low.
Yeah,
Well-
and it's it's something I've always struggled with because here's the like the case in point I always use is, you know, one of my in-laws, his girlfriend, who's 60 something years old, they put in a roundabout near her house, which is very distressing. And she was asking me the question with all seriousness, when is the government going to reach out to me and teach me how to use the roundabout? Right? Like,
Do they
there's
teach
like
in driver's ed? That's a really good question.
no, she's 65 years old. Those didn't exist, what, 60 years ago when she learned how to drive.
They
So
should teach.
there's a
Not
gap
her,
there's a
but
gap in
kids.
there's a gap in knowledge here, but there's like zero personal responsibility in the idea that maybe she could like look into this herself.
There's a video. Like,
That's
it's
crazy.
the same people that put out how to merge, you know, things like that, how to turn left.
Right.
Whose turn is it at the stop sign? You know, just go learn it. Go find it. It's on YouTube.
Well, does anybody teach that stuff anymore? There's a similar situation on Nextdoor. Somebody did kind of a mini rant about how people don't walk on the correct side of the road. You're supposed to walk against traffic if you're on a street that has traffic, right?
Sam.
And the number of people, it actually drives me insane too. I was kind of happy that this person kind of put it out there. But I was literally driving home this morning from the post office, and there were people walking on the wrong side of the road. And all of a sudden I just started thinking about it a little bit more. I'm like, I bet they don't have bicycle safety anymore, because that's where we all learned it. Was you ride on
Yeah.
the right side and you walk on the left.
Or my
Right.
dad.
And sorry, and Ben, I didn't mean to derail the point you were making, but yeah, because that's what I struggle with is like like you're saying in an organization where they're trying to roll something like that. So like, how much of it is on the organization to like get it in front of people versus there should be some personal responsibility for people to like take some initiative and at least try, right?
Correct. Yep.
It's definitely a challenge too. You know, you got an employee that's a subject matter expert. You know, they got their full-time job to deal with, you know, let alone find time to innovate and try to do some of this stuff. Yep.
It's
Yeah.
intimidating. Speaking as somebody who's not a technologist at all, it's intimidating. And
Well, there's
it's
so many.
the more I do it, the less
Yeah.
intimidating it becomes, obviously, because it's a lot easier to use than you might think. But it's intimidating.
Yeah.
Well, you gotta use the right model then, at least, Claire, because some of them are
Oh, yeah.
very very nice, but
Yeah.
Claude is just like, no, dummy, you know, I'm not, like, this is stupid, I'm not gonna help you with this. Feels more like a traditional a traditional Kyle type IT person, like, move.
Okay,
Yeah.
Get out of
interesting.
my way.
I have not done anything with Claude. So what were you gonna say, Kyle?
I was just going to say, Ben, we got 3 minutes left. Take us home. Give us a parting thought on increasing adoption and using vibe coding and anything else you think of.
Yeah, with the increasing adoption, obviously it just starts top down. Like, we got to have leadership involved in these adoption strategies and have them, whether it's a public message or something, just say, hey, these are our tools, these are what we're going to use, and stuff like that. As far as vibe coding is concerned, I still think we're really early from a Power Platform perspective. I think the AI stuff is evolving very quickly within the low code platforms, and it's making software creation more accessible. But I think it kind of also comes down to it's not just about low code versus pro code or humans versus AI. We just got to really figure out how we can use these tools together to solve the complex business problems at the end of the day.
Very well said.
Well
Yep.
said.
Yeah.
If I can just piggyback on that, if you want to get started with vibe coding, vibe.powerapps.com. And if you want to explore beyond just the UI and you want to actually look into like maybe the Dataverse backend or something, make sure you have System Customizer. Talk to your Power Platform administrator, and that will allow you to potentially build tables behind the app and actually populate data if you'd like.
Talk to your Power App administrator, and he will talk to
Oh.
Corey.
There you go.
Yes.
They will collaborate, right?
We will collaborate. Yes. All right. Well, thanks everybody for being here and talking about this stuff.
Yeah,
I
thank
think
you.
it's something that is going to be discussed over a very long time before we get it right. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't play along the way. So with that, I think we can say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye,
Bye,
everybody.
everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Solution Design Group is a digital product consultancy in Minneapolis. Check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com or look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.